Okay, hello. This is Math 2, Unit 9, Lesson 3, looking at volumes of prisms and cylinders today. Just a few things to kind of keep in mind as we begin this. First of all, if we're talking about a prism, our formulas for the volume of a prism is essentially that volume equals the base, the large base of the object, times the height. Typically, you learn that probably in elementary school or so back as your length times your width times the height. That's okay. The base is a combination of length and width. All right. In this case here, sometimes we're going to have some triangles. If you have a triangle with a base, right, with a triangular base, then you remember the formula for a triangle is 1/2 of the little base times the height. And if it's a prism like so, then we're going to multiply it by the larger height as well. All right, so we'll use those formulas today in what we're doing. We'll also be looking at some prisms, and prisms are going to be dealing with circles which have a radius. You take the area and we multiply by the height. So it'll be your pi r squared times, again, the height of the whole shape. So we'll look at those formulas as we go through today's lesson here. So let's start with number 1 first of all. Number 1, we have given to us, we have a base shape here on this bottom. This is our base, and we can see it has a length and a width, an 8 and a 4. So for our base value is 8 times 4, which is 32. And now we'll take our base and multiply it by the height, which is here at 5, the height. So that becomes 32 times 5 for a solution of 160 centimeters cubed. And it's cubed because we have a centimeter times a centimeter times a centimeter, so it's 160 cubic centimeters there. Another example here, number 2. We have the same idea. We have a base with a 9 by 5 bottom there. Again, 9 times 5 is 45 centimeters squared. We want to multiply that by the height, which is 7. So 45 times 7 is 315 centimeters cubed for the volume of that shape there. So we're just going to multiply our numbers that we have, 9 times 5, and then again times 7 to come up with the area of that shape. Looking at number 7, first of all, we have a triangle. Now the triangle, be careful with the triangles because our height has to be a 90-degree angle measurement there. So if we look at this triangle, find the area of that base first of all. The area of that base is going to be equal to 1/2 times the base times the height. So the area of this triangle is going to be equal to half of the base, which they say is 4, times the height, which is 6. So 1/2 times 4 is 2, 2 times 6 is 12. So the area of this triangular shape is 12 meters squared. But now I have the length or the height of the whole shape. I'm going to multiply the 12 too. So 12 times 10 ends up with 120 meters squared. So if I wrote the whole thing out, it would look like this is the formula. It would look like the area equals 1/2 base times the little height times the height of the whole figure. I write that as a big H when I do that, my kids. So I plug it in 1/2 of the base times 4 times the height of 6 times the long run is 10. And that's the same idea. You still end up with 120. Okay, so that's the area of a triangle times the height of the whole prism. Now we look at number 8. 8 is a little bit different, okay? So be careful because sometimes you're going to see some numbers and think, oh, I'll just plug them in. If you do this and plugged in 10 times 16 times 20 divided by 2, you will not get the correct answer, okay? And that's because this 20 right here, for example, is not a height. It's not the height of the triangle. This is our triangle right there. Let's draw right here real quick, just by itself. Our triangle is right here, and we have a 10, and we know that this is 20. Well, this is the height that I need. I don't know what that height is. In order to figure out what that height is, I actually have to use the Pythagorean Theorem to solve for h before I can solve the volume of this prism. So I'm going to say that 10 squared plus my height squared equals 20 squared. Okay? So 10 squared is 100 plus h squared equals 20 squared is 400. I subtract 100 from both sides, and I have h squared equals 300. I take the square root of both sides to find that h is going to equal to 17.32. So now I actually have a height, 17.32, that I could use to find the volume of that prism. So now I'll go ahead and use the formula. 1/2 of the base 10 times the height, which is 17.32, times how tall or long this thing is. The 20 actually, I don't need anymore. I'm going to use the 16 for how long that triangle carries across that space. Okay, so now I have something a little bit different here. So when I work that out, I end up with 10 times 17.32 times 16 divided by 2 equals 1,385.6. So 1,385.6, and this is feet cubed. Alright, so a little more complicated than before because they did not give me an actual height. I had to use the Pythagorean Theorem in order to figure out what the height was going to be. So be careful on questions like that you don't just get in a hurry and start saying, oh, look at my numbers, multiply, divide by 2. Be careful, there wasn't an actual height there. Flipping it over to the back side, we're looking at number 15 and 18. I'm actually going to go ahead and start with 18 first of all because it's a basic cylinder, and then we'll do 15 next, okay? So number 18. To solve for a cylinder, we take the area of the circle, pi r squared, this shape right here, and we multiply it by, again, how long that is. Again, I would often just say how tall it is. If it's laying down, not a big deal. How tall it is, how long it is, not a big deal. So in this case, we have pi times the radius, which is 3, and we're going to square that, times how long it is, which is 6. So pi times 3 squared is 9 times 6. So right now I am at 9 times 6 is 54, and 54 pi. It just says to find the nearest tenth, so then I have to use my calculator. And I'm going to clear this out, and I have 54 times 3.14, and that gives me 169.56. And again, it wants the nearest tenth, so that's going to be 169.6 feet cubed will be my answer for a basic cylinder on number 18. Okay, so now that's a basic cylinder. Now I'm going to move to number 15. 15 is a composite figure, just like a composite number back before in elementary school, back in 4th grade. Composite means it's made up of 1 or 2 or more parts. So I have 2 things together here. In this case, I have a rectangular prism, and I have half of a cylinder. It's not a greatly drawn cylinder, but I'm going to assume that it's supposed to be half of a cylinder. All right? It doesn't really look perfect, but I'm going to say that's half a cylinder. So first of all, for the volume of this space right here, that's easy enough. That's just going to be our base, our length times width times height. However you want to look at that, 8 times 6 times 2, and we end up with 96. Okay, meters squared. So this section right here is 96 meters squared for that part there. No problem. Now when I come to this section of the cylinder, my formula for the cylinder again was pi times r squared times the height. Alright, well, my radius, they didn't give me a radius, they gave me a diameter. Well, a radius is half of a diameter. What is half of 2? 2 divided by 2 is 1. So in this case, my radius is 1 squared times the height, which in this case here is still right there, 6 times 6. So I'm sitting here right now with 6 pi altogether for the volume of the full cylinder. Now, let's go ahead and do this because they want the nearest whole number. So I'm going to clear this out and do 6 times 3.14. And we have right now, we're sitting at 18.84. But be careful with this one because, again, this is the formula for the entire cylinder. But in our shape, we're only looking at half of the cylinder. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to take my 18.84 and divide that by 2. 18.84 divided by 2 is 9.42. Okay, 9.42. So now what I need to do is combine my 96 with my 9.42. So here's a 96 plus 9.42, and we end up with 105.42. They want the nearest whole number, so my nearest whole number is actually just 105 meters cubed. So a great little problem there, where you're going to find the volume of a cylinder, the volume of a rectangular prism, and then half of a cylinder, right? If you got a number that was like, well, if you got 96 plus 18, which I'm thinking if you might have got that, 9, 10, you get about 114 or so. If you got an answer about 114, that's because you added the whole cylinder to the shape, and it's just half of it. That's all that's there. So be careful with your shapes, you know what's going on there. All right? Another composite one there, I won't do it, but you have 16. If you look at it, what do we have? We have a rectangular prism, and on top of that, you have a triangular prism on top of that you'll add those two sections together. All right? Hope that helps with today's lesson. Good luck. We'll see you next time.